Hello, everyone. Welcome to All In on Real Estate. I'm your host, Aaron Goins. I started this meetup because when I was in the military, no one in my circle was talking about real estate. A lot of times we talk about wealth and other finances, but nothing about real estate. So I want to start a meetup where people can learn and understand about real estate and start building generational wealth and building families. So I'm very, very excited for our guest speaker today, Miss Emma Powell. How, Emma? How you doing?
Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So let me ask you the question I asked everybody else. What is your origin story into real estate?
Well, it started out when my husband got laid off in 2017, and it was the second time he'd been laid off, but it was the first time that we ever went to work and came home in the middle of the day, and we just didn't see it coming. And he had told me the night before. I mean, the night before we were out on a date, just walking around in downtown Austin, and I said, "What would you do if you lost your job? Like, if you went into work tomorrow and you got fired or laid off, like, what's our plan?" And he didn't really want to talk about it. He's like, "This is super negative to be talking about on our date." And then the next day he came home in the middle of the day, laid off. And he said, "We are never talking about getting laid off again, because I think that it's because we brought it up last night." And we just sat there and just stared at each other like, what do we do? We just went into go mode, went to every meetup, every business networking event, just passing out resumes, name dropping, whatever we could do to try and get him another job. And he got a couple of interview offers in Salt Lake City. So we packed up and drove up to Salt Lake City from Austin, and he had a job interview, like 6 or 7 job interviews in that couple of weeks that we were here, and a job offer. And we were off from Austin. I think it took us like 10 days. He was gone. And then I packed up and followed him up there. And so I just started doing the same thing. I was a wedding photographer, real estate photographer, and I had to leave that business behind. I got up here. I'm like, do I really want to keep doing that? I was getting older. My hands were hurting. The camera was, and it was just a lot of hustle. And I thought if I worked full time, I could probably gross 100 grand a year. And that just wasn't good enough to spend that much time away from my kids. I just graduated college and I was doing some marketing, contracting for a couple of different companies. And during all those business networking meetups that I went to with my husband, I thought, okay, what if I started an entrepreneurial consulting company where I taught small businesses how to keep their books, how to do their social media management, how to market, how to just better customer service. They may be really good at what they're doing, but they don't know a lot about running a business. And so when we were at these events, nobody was hiring a high priced, IT manager. They were all looking for small business entrepreneurial services, and they were offer to hire me to do this kind of stuff. In fact, the guy who laid him off went and started a new company, and he hired me to do his marketing. And he's like, I can't afford a full-time IT guy. I need like a marketing contractor. So I ended up working for him. So when I got up to Salt Lake City, I was doing some of these remote jobs, and I started going to a lot of business networking meetings thinking that I would sell this service to do marketing and entrepreneurial consulting. And what ended up happening is I ended up at a bunch of real estate networking meetings. And I thought, you know what? If I want to maximize how much money I can make in the least amount of time, which as a mom, homeschooling mom, was really, really important to me, I said, I'm barking up the wrong tree here. I need passive income. And I'd always, obviously, was a real estate photographer, always been interested in that. I learned graphic design and computer aided drafting and things like that, making floor plans when I was a kid on our first computer. I just fascinated by the whole real estate thing. I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm spinning my wheels, hustling around, trying to make, a decent income, whereas I could just become a real estate investor and blow the lid off this thing. And my husband would never have to worry about getting laid off again. And after just a couple of months, I was like, not only does he not have to worry about getting laid off, but I think I can retire him in the next couple of years. So that became our goal at that point, was passive income to replace his income as soon as possible.
Wow. Okay. I love the story. I love the story. So starting off, what was some of your pain points, some of the things, early lessons that you learned?
I I think that I maybe jumped in a little before I was ready to, because I don't love doing the detail stuff, like the legal stuff, some of the due diligence types of nitty gritties. And so the first thing I did is I made a large private loan to a local flipper that I met at our real estate club. And everybody was pointing when I said I had some cash. We had sold our house in Texas and we were renting in Salt Lake, didn't have any other debt. And so we had this pile of cash that I thought, okay, well, maybe I should loan it out to a flipper. I'd heard of hard money loans before that. We tried to dabble around with investing in Austin, but we never actually did anything. And so I thought, okay, maybe I could be one of those hard money lenders. And so I basically loaned the entire the entire pile to one flipper. based on the recommendation of a bunch of people at the local REIA. I was like, oh, I've got my retirement money with them. I've got this, but I didn't know how to do due diligence on this. Like, is he legit? Like, I looked him up to see if he had any court cases open and a few little things like that, but I just had no idea how to do it. And I put the whole pile in one place. And I think he was paying me like 10% return, which for hard money is no good with no points. And I just, looking back on it, we've become great friends, and he was a great mentor to me. And now he's doing multifamily syndication or just starting down that path as well. And so it's been a nice collaboration of him teaching me and me teaching him. And it ended up being a great relationship. But at the time, I didn't know that there were better deals out there for hard money. I didn't know how to vet out the person that I was loaning it to. So I think I just jumped in a little too fast because I had this money burning a hole in my pocket. And so I want to convey to people that you need to be an action taker, because learning is not action taking. It feels like you're doing something, like a meetup like this. It feels like, oh, I'm attending, I'm learning, I'm meeting. But if you never apply that to go do a deal, then it's just a hobby. It's just a pastime. And so I definitely think people should be action takers, but there are certain things you might want to feel like you have gone through a checklist of due diligence items before you jump into a deal.
Love that. I love that. So what was your first deal like?
The first deal I did, I actually bought a house from someone I knew whose husband had also been laid off, and he'd been out of work for about a year. And I called her, and her husband was a very high income earner. I think the last year he had his business, he was putting up almost 7 figures a year. And they just had gone through making a house payment, just trying to keep the whole ship afloat while he wasn't, like, he was a C-suite kind of guy. And so it's really hard for him to find a new job. And he had tried to start a new business all during that time. It wasn't working out. So they just basically were running out of money, and their house was going to get foreclosed on. And I called her and I said, hey, I wish there was something I could do to help. I don't know what. And she said, all those years that we're making all that money, you were the only one in my close circle who never once asked me for money. And I didn't know that. There were plenty of times I wished I could have asked her for money, because I knew a lot of people did, but I just never did. And so when I told her I wish I could help her, and she said, if you could, I would take it. But she's like, made a joke. She's like, you want to give my husband a job? You want to buy my house? And I was like, no, I can't do either one of those things, but maybe I can send you a gift card for a grocery store. Right. And so that's when I started attending the real estate clubs. And I asked somebody there about the situation. I asked a bunch of people, like, if you had this situation, what would you do? And they told me what they would do in that situation. So I called her back, talked to her husband, and I said, hey, I actually think I can buy your house. And here are a couple of ideas. You pick one that works best for you. And I was very upfront. I said, here's the one that works best for me, but it may not be the best fit for you. So here's some other options. And we kind of look at the pros and cons of each. And they ended up choosing one, and I ended up buying their house, and I still own it. So that was the first investment home that I ever bought. I reinstated the loan. I took it over subject to their existing mortgage. So we're on title, but they're on the mortgage. And so right now we're working on selling or refinance or something to get them off the mortgage, because their credit has been repaired to the point where they can now go buy another house a couple of years later. So that was the first one I ever bought. And then I started looking for commercial. I thought, if I can make some money off of some of these little deals, flipping and things like that, I can go buy a little apartment complex. And I ended up buying a few more small residential rentals along the way, just because, you start going to clubs and you get on their wholesale lists and you see a good deal. I'm like, oh, I have the money, I'll buy it. And then we started running out of money to buy our apartment building. And my husband at that point said, well, all of this raising capital thing, using other people's money and syndication that you've been learning about at these clubs, he said, instead of buying our own place with our own money, how about you just go bigger and go raise capital? And so that was really where the corner was turned after about a year of just kind of messing around, dabbling and spending our money and buying properties and not really getting our commercial goal. So when we finally were able to say, okay, we're going to be syndicators, we're going to do bigger deals, we're going to raise capital, is where the business really shifted. And I haven't bought a residential property since, other than the one that we live in.
So, one thing we talked about beforehand was partners. How was your experience with your first couple partners on your deals?
I feel like I work well with partners, and I can pull people together who may be having disagreements or differences in personality. I think the biggest mistake I made in my first partnership wasn't so much of one of personality or getting along or anything, but we didn't have complementary skill sets. I thought we did at the time. But as we took a personality test, the group of us, and it turned out like we didn't have anybody on the team who was hyper detail oriented, but I thought we did, and I knew it wasn't me. And so I remember talking to them and looking at these results from this personality test and saying, "What are we going to do? We got nobody, we got no detail oriented people here. We have no operators of that personality type." And we've muddled through it pretty well. We just kind of help out. We've hired some VAs and done some things, but it's really important to find somebody who complements your weaknesses and you complement their weaknesses. And we just didn't know that. So I think asking those questions, we didn't need a personality test for everybody, but just asking them like, what are you good at? What's your major skill set? And I'll contrast that to another partnership that I was in where I had a partner who was a professional project manager for a commercial construction company. And so I called him up one day and I said, "I'm really struggling. I show up at these meetings and I don't have the stuff done that I'm supposed to have done. I don't have my paperwork. I haven't done the research or whatever I'm supposed to get because I forget. And I just need some help coming up with some systems so that I can come into these meetings and not look like such a flake." And just being honest with him about the struggles that I was having. And he was so happy to help me because that was his strength. And he wanted to feel like he was contributing in an area that was easy for him to contribute because it was difficult for me, but it was easy for him. And so he set up a couple of systems and reminders and little, some were IT and some were him just putting it on his calendar to remind me to do certain things. And he basically became like our project manager where he would check in with everybody once or twice a week, say, "Hey, our meeting for Tuesday or whatever, you said you would do this, this, and this. Do you need any help with that before the meeting?" So he really became that role in that deal, and it worked out much, much better because we had somebody who was really very attentive to details. And so I've just made sure that in every partnership that I've been in since then, somebody is like that and somebody's in charge of that because that's not me.
So I was talking to somebody earlier, he's on here, and we were talking about out-of-state deals. How are you with out-of-state deals as far as getting them and your trust level, and because you're not there? So how do you manage that?
It's definitely harder because you're not there. And so one thing that we've done on an out-of-state deal that we had where we were trying to manage it from a distance and we'd go visit it every once in a while. It was everybody had to take a flight. Nobody was close. Well, no, that's not true. We did have some partners who would drive up there every 2, 3 months, once a quarter or so, and put their eyes on it. And they had some construction experience, and so they could see what was going on. But that was still pretty difficult. We ended up selling that property after a little over a year because I think we're just really burned out on managing it. Because even though you have a property manager and even though we had somebody who was driving up to see it once a quarter, it was just a very needy property. And so we just felt like, we've added the value, we've got it stabilized, let's move on. And I think a big part of that was the fact that it was out of state. And we have some other stuff out of state where I'm I think 3 hours away and my partner's 3 hours away. And so we'll take turns driving up there and it's near my husband's hometown. So we're driving up through there a lot. So I'll stop and look at things. But the first property we got in that area, that's still how we're doing it. The second property I got in that area, I got a local partner. And so she's maybe 40 minutes away from the property. And so she's there 2, 3 times a week. And we just have her expense her gas and some things like that. So she can go check on it. And I would say that project is being run in a much tighter fashion because she's there saying like, why is this here? Why isn't that wired properly? Because the details really is where it can make or break a project. And since I'm not very detail oriented, she was telling me, she says, people know that you're being sloppy and you're going to get taken advantage of. And I said, that's why I have you, because nobody's taking advantage of you. You're there, you're very detail oriented and conscientious. And I need someone like that on my team. And so you have to be able to find people who are going to fill in the things that you're bad at. And being bad at details, it makes you a great entrepreneur, visionary, all that CEO stuff, but it will ruin your deals if you don't have somebody in there who is attentive to that kind of stuff.
Great gems, great gems. I love it, Emma. So um, as you started to get more properties and starting into, into commercial, what was something that, you was maybe an aha moment that you would like to share?
I don't, I've been going back and listening to some old podcast interviews that I've done because I want to make sure that I have new stories. I'm not telling the same stories over and over again. And I've actually been pretty surprised. Like even the very first interviews that I was doing, I'm saying the same stuff now, thinking that it was an aha moment, but then I'll hear myself say it on podcasts like a year ago. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I forgot I already had the aha moment. So I think that things that have probably the biggest pivot that I've had in my business is when we lost a deal. And the aha moment that I had was, wasn't the point of this to retire your husband and have passive income and retire early? But here you are building a big syndication business. And I just felt like you're on the wrong track. When we lost that deal, I lost a bunch of money, like legal fees, due diligence fees, just all the stuff, the flights, everything, all the stuff you have to do at the early days of a deal. I ended up eating almost all of that. I had a partner who couldn't pay his portion, so I had to pay his portion for him. It was a lot of money. And I remember being relieved. Even though I lost all that money, I remember being relieved that we didn't buy that deal, because I felt like the first commercial deal that we did was the one that would retire my husband. That was the life-changing one. And every deal I did after that added another 2 to 5 years onto our time frame of when I could walk away from my business. So what good did it do to have him quit his job if then I was running this big business? People are like, oh, is your husband going to quit and then come work in your business? I said, no, he's going to quit and we're going to do something. We're going to have passive income. We're going to sit and think about what the next part of our life looks like, some sort of nonprofit or business coaching for former athletes, former combat soldiers, young people who are ambitious and don't really have any direction. Like, that's what we really want to be doing with our time. And we can't do that if I'm running a syndication business. And I said, all we have to do is wait. We just have to wait for this first one to go full cycle. That's the one that's going to change our life. And so in the interim, we've done a few smaller deal, like little things, and have picked up some more properties. Little by little, I've been turning over more and more of the management to other people, so that the time comes that I'm like, all right, we're ready to walk away, that I'm not mid-project. So I want to stop taking on so many of them. And the ones that I do take on, I want to have a minor management role in the ongoing day-to-day asset management. So that was a real aha moment for me. Like, I'm barking up the wrong tree. So I put the goal onto the vision board, and it's right here. I look at it every single day and I remind myself why I'm doing what I'm doing. Everybody says I want passive income to spend more time with our family, but in the meantime, I'm going to start a giant syndication business. And it's really important that you keep it front and center. Are you starting a business because you want to employ people and you want to provide clean, safe communities? Or are you starting a business because you want to have passive income and retire early? If the answer is the latter, why are you starting a big syndication business? There are other ways to go about doing this that are less time consuming and will get you to your passive income goals just the same. If you're looking for some more money, so you have more money to invest, any job will get you there. Any job will get you there. And so I chose real estate as my business because I love real estate, obviously. But you could be anything where you can make a lot of money doing it. It doesn't matter what it is. If real estate is the thing where you can make a lot of money, go for it. But it's got to have a finite point and time period. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with another job.
Man, that's brilliant right there. That's brilliant. I think that, when you first come in, oh man, I'll do this and I'll start making passive income. But like you said, it is a job. When you're in charge of syndication or you're part of a team, you're doing a job. So
Yep.
I definitely understand. Definitely that really resonates with me with that. So, I've known you for what you have in the background, your
Yeah.
commercial real estate club. So could you talk about how did you go from, got into it and start operating it?
Well, it was from that loss. I remembered having breakfast with somebody who, she says, hey, I want to invest in one of your deals. And I sat down with her, and sure enough, she didn't really want to be a limited partner. She wanted to be a joint venture partner. She wanted to get her feet wet. She wanted to learn the ropes. And she thought, hey, I've got some cash. I'll put it into one of her deals and I'll learn as she guides the process. And that's a fine approach. It's a very common approach, and one I even recommend. The problem that I was having was people were wanting to put in $150,000 when we had a $6 million raise on a 200 unit apartment building. And you can't have 40 joint venture partners in a deal. It's illegal. And I was really struggling with this because when I went out to go raise limited partner funds, I raised like 75K of $1 million that I was supposed to be raising for that deal, because I had $1 million in soft commits, but they all want to be joint venture partners. And so that was that deal that we ended up losing because we couldn't raise the capital for it. And I just grossly misjudged my ability to raise limited partner capital. So I was talking to my partner on another project, and I was frustrated. He happens to be a securities attorney and his dad runs an institutional fund. And so he really knows the business. And I asked him, I said, why can't I just create an LLC and put all these joint ventures and partners in it who want to put in money, and part of the payoff for them is getting to sit in the front seat along the way? I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand what's the problem with that. They get some co-GP on their resume and they can learn and all of this. And he said, well, that's an investing club. The SEC's already carved out rules on how you operate an investing club like that. I had never heard of that before. And it just immediately was like, oh, you can do it? Because here I was complaining, like, why can't you do this? And he said, yeah, there you go. So I went home and sec.gov investing club and read up all about it and talked with half a dozen attorneys over the ensuing couple of months. I had taken my meetup where it was just a group of people. We'd get together, we'd have a speaker similar to what we're doing tonight. I would do it once a month. And so I went in and I said, hey, I have an idea and I think it's legal. So you guys want to switch over to an investing club where we just look at deals together and we pool our cash and we go invest in other people's deals. Let them run it. Let them have the job and we'll bring in the cash, but we're not going to be limited partners. We're going to be joint venture partners and we're going to go into either their general partnership if we have a legitimate reason to be there. And if we don't have a legitimate reason to be there, they don't use that structure, we can start a fund and you got a fund manager experience on your resume instead of co-GP. So we're kind of doing a co-GP thing right now with the operators who we've been able to make an arrangement with to have a legitimate job. But for those that are not, we're in the early days of starting some funds and so that we can go in that way. So for me, it's a lot less work. It's a lot less stress. If we don't make our commit, like, hey, we're going to bring in 500,000, we're going to shoot for $1 million, but it's going to probably be somewhere between 500 and $1 million. And they know that going in up front, we only bring in 650. Everybody's happy. And it's not that stressful. We didn't make $1 million, which we wanted to make, but everybody was happy. And they have other people who are raising capital, like the lead sponsors are also raising. So for me, it's been a much better fit. And it allows me to get a jump on this whole nonprofit thing that I was mentioning, where now we've got people who have been wanting to get into this business for a while. Maybe they spent $30,000 on a guru or a course or something that had like secrets in the title. And then they realize, oh, it's just, you still got to go out and do the work. And I think a lot of times for early beginners are putting a lot of money into these kinds of things where they're spending tens of thousands of dollars and doing some course or some class. It's the mimicry of action. They feel like, oh, I spent a lot of money on it. I'm going to these things every week. And they feel like they're taking action when that's not what taking action is. Taking action is doing a deal. And so the investing club, I should have this be our motto. It's like, I can't guarantee that you're going to make money. You might lose every dime that you put into a deal, but the one thing I can guarantee is that you did a deal. And I think in this business, the first deal or the first couple small deals are so important for confidence building, for credibility, for your ability to talk to brokers, talk to investors, talk to potential sellers, talking to lenders. You need a resume. You need a resume. And so we help people build that with a much lower barrier of entry. And for me, it's a better fit. And for a lot of people who just can't get over that steep hurdle because either they are scared or they realize, I'm going to build a big business, I'm not sure if I want to do that. It allows them to learn by doing, hands-on, in just a much less stressful, much less threatening way, and allows me to work with the kind of people that I want to work with who are ambitious and hard workers. They just need a softer place to start.
I love that. I love that. So we do have a young man on here who's 19 and he's starting out. He's looking for deals. He's very, full steam ahead. What kind of advice would you give to somebody like that who's just starting off with real estate and wants to get into commercial real estate?
I have a 19-year-old daughter, a 20-year-old son, and a 24-year-old daughter. And I talk to them about this a lot. Like, how can a kid start a new business? We actually have a high school senior in our club. The club is free, and so anybody can come and join. There's no revenue model behind it. I have the same problem raising money that probably everybody has, where I can't raise that much from limited partners. So I needed the club so that I could get into deals in a lower threshold as well. So I'm in the same boat, which is why I'm not charging money or monetizing for it, because I need it just as much as the club members. But for a young person just starting out, here's what I'm doing with my daughter specifically, who's the 19-year-old who's opted out of college, and she just wants to go straight for the real estate investing. She's seen her older sister struggling through engineering school and the massive opportunity cost of not only not making money during that time, but paying somebody else money, and how slowly she's been going because the classes are really hard. And she says, you know what, she's just going to do that so she can make money and become a real estate investor, because that's what the engineering daughter wants to do. She just wants to run like an engineering consulting firm so she can make a lot of money and then invest in real estate. She says, how about I just skip all that and just start investing now? And so she's just working like as a dental assistant and in fast food so that she can live at home for cheap and just get her business off the ground. And so what she's doing is step one is every time she gets a little bit of money, I find some sort of a project that she can invest it in $5,000. So we bought a mobile home together about 2 years ago, and now she gets $130 a month just showing up in her bank account from the note, the rent on this one. And so that gave her first taste of passive income. And we just went in on it together. Somebody brought me the deal, said, do you want a mobile home? It's already remodeled. And so her and she was 17 at the time, and I think my younger daughter was like 13 or 14. And so we each pulled in like $4,000 or $4,500 and bought this mobile home together. And now we get $400 a month that we split between the three of us, month in, month out. And it doesn't take any management because it's a note. It's like a rent to own type of note. And so that gave them their first taste of how to put a little bit of money in and start getting passive income. And if I have to go over there for any reason, which I almost never do, I bring them with me and we talk about it. So we're doing club deals now. And the 19-year-old can put her cash in under her own name into our joint venture. She can put in like $5,000 and be a joint venture partner with us on that project, because the minimum of the syndication is $50,000. But since we're going in as a joint venture, like as a group, we don't have minimums in the club. We've had people go in for 10 grand before, and they didn't raise another dime of capital from their limited partner network. So they're in their first commercial deal for like 10 grand. And so she's like, hey, can I put 5 grand in your next commercial deal, get it on her resume? And I said, and then the next thing you need to do is take that opportunity and use it as marketing material. So for example, we just closed, get an email list, start writing it down, get a website. If you want to sign up for HubSpot, which is a customer relationship manager, they do require that you have a website. So go get yourself some sort of web address. It could be like yourwebsite.google.com. We don't care. It doesn't even have to be professional at this point. Just go get some sort of a web address so you can enter it in, get your HubSpot and start putting your list together. The email list is key for raising capital. And the more capital you can raise, the more deals you can do. So even if you are able to find your own deal and find the right partners to run it, who's going to pay for it? Who's raising the money? Everybody's raising the money. All roads lead to capital raising if you're in this business. If you can't raise capital, you're dead in the water, unless you're highly, highly specialized in something else, which as a beginner, you're not. So you need to be able to raise capital. And the more capital you can raise, the more in demand you're going to be, especially right now, because this liquidity that we've had over the last decade or two is going away because of the baby boomers are retiring en masse this year, and they're going to move all their capital into super, super boring investments, annuities, T-bills, things like that. So that liquidity is going to start drying up. We have had the labor shortage starting to pick up. We're not having the immigration that we had from Mexico. That peaked like, what was that, 2013, 2016. So our labor force is a lot smaller. And my generation, Gen X, it's the smallest generation we've ever seen. And the baby boomers were the biggest. So we're not going to come up, these 40 somethings like pushing 50s, we're not going to come up and add a lot of capital to the system that the baby boomers are removing as they're retiring. So we're going to see a capital crunch for a long time just because of the demographics that we're facing. And you have the millennials, which are a pretty big generation, but half of them are still like living with their parents and kind of unemployed. I think that, Gen Z, which is my kids, is also very, very small because there are not that many of us. And so we didn't have that many kids. But then you've got the millennials kids who are coming up, and that's what, 20 years away, 25 years away. So we're going to see a huge capital crunch. So he who can raise capital will be king in the economy coming up over the next 20 years, probably, from what I'm seeing demographically. So be able to raise capital and you will get yourself into deals. We have more deals than we know what to do with because people know that we raise capital. We couldn't possibly raise that much capital for all those deals, but we got deals coming out of our ears and most of them are pretty good. Lots and lots of base hits, a couple of home runs here and there, but we could be raising money all day long, every day, millions and millions of dollars. We have plenty of deals to keep us busy. If you can raise money, that's where the money is. So I would start there. And if you end up liking deal finding better and can specialize in something else along the way, you will figure that out. But the best way to get yourself into a deal when you don't have one is to bring cash.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Man, it's great stuff right there. Definitely got to attend the event soon.
Yeah.
It's mountain time, so it's 5:30 here Pacific time.
Yeah. We'll get you a deal. You don't have to be in the club meetings to do the deal. We have a Slack channel where we go in. That's where we get most of the actual work done, where we have a channel for each deal that we're looking at. We have committees that people can volunteer for to be able to do underwriting. So like you research insurance and you research taxes and you research comps. And so we divide and conquer. We have a legal review team who will look at the PPM and our operating agreements and things like that. And so there are ways to get involved in the club that don't involve having to come on Monday nights. We've got a couple of expats living in Europe and they've invested in deals with us just through the Slack channel. And every once in a while, they'll show up at a meeting at like 2 a.m. just because they're right in the middle of doing a deal and they need to be at that meeting, but once or twice a year, it's not heavy. So I don't think that we have a lot of ways for people to get involved in the level and the manner that is comfortable for you, because I want to create something where everybody is able to participate and everybody who has a diverse set of goals is able to find something there that they can get out of it, whether it's just education, the free education, free networking, or if it's actually doing a deal and learning, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So you can put a little bit in, get a little bit out, or you can really volunteer and go crazy on it. We have a few people in the club who have done that and they've been doing more deals and they've been learning more because they're putting more into it. So it's super, super flexible. It just for beginners, we've got fund managers in there who are just using us for filler deals because they got like 200 grand. And they're like, I don't have anywhere to put this. So they'll come toss in one of our deals, or we're partnering up with them where they're going to raise $1 million. We're going to bring in $1 million and then we use that to go negotiate for better terms, things like that. So we've got a wide variety of people in the club.
Love that. I love that. So look, I'm not gonna hold up our attendees. So if you guys have any questions to ask Emma, please do. Please raise your hand and ask a question. Go ahead, Jordan.
Hey, Emma, how's it going?
Hey, Jordan.
So when you are finding partners, how are you finding them? I mean, yeah, it's the best way I can say it.
I found my first partners at a real estate club meeting where we had a multifamily syndicator come and speak to us and we all went out to lunch afterwards, like a big banquet at the restaurant table, and sat around and we all introduced ourselves. And that's where I met my first two partners. One was in an in-person meeting and the other was at an online meeting with that same syndicator, who became something of a mentor for me. I went to a couple of his events and things, and I would meet people there. So my next partners I met at through that same syndicator at one of his conferences. And there was a guy there who was really good at underwriting, a spreadsheet guru. And I sat down next to him and I was like, I don't do this. Like, show me your ways, Yoda type of thing. And he went home and told his partners about me. And so his partners reached out and wanted to invest on a deal that I had. And then he ended up coming along and running our financial stuff and all that. So that's how I met my second set of partners. And also LinkedIn, because a joint venture, you can publicly advertise. So I would just put in my LinkedIn little bio line there where it's like, multifamily syndicator, I'll teach you how to get mailbox money. And I just personalize that. I put like, I am looking for joint venture partners for a 100-unit deal in Cleveland, $200,000 minimum, because you can do that. And so then people reach out who have $200,000 and they want to do a deal as a joint venture partner. So I found a lot more success raising capital from joint ventures than I ever have from limited partners. And that was another reason we did the club, is because I've been able to raise millions of dollars through joint ventures, but I've raised probably, I don't know, 200 grand from limited partners, maybe 300. It's pretty bad. So that's where I find them. I find them on social media. I find them in events like this. And the way that I screen them is basically like, if you could only do one thing, what's your superpower? What would it be? And if they're just like me, then they're not going to make good partners.
And is that, so you go into it on the premise of raising capital, and typically, you're finding people who is like, do you have capital and deals and then they participate, or is
If
it
I
like
have the deal, I'll put it out there that I'm looking for capital. Or I'll say that we're raising capital for somebody else's deal, but we're looking for joint venture partners. So I'm really careful not to do it for 506Bs that way, because, or if we've got a 506C, like what we're doing in the club right now, I say accredited investors only. We're looking for joint venture partners coming through our club, $100,000 minimum or 50 or whatever it is, right? And I just put it out there. And I spend a lot of time at events on social media. And so I have lots and lots of partners now. The ones that I am directly working with the most closely, I met at a mastermind event for entrepreneurs. It wasn't a real estate event. It was the weirdest thing. The guy was up speaking, and he was speaking on fitness. It wasn't even on business. It was basically like how to enhance your fitness so you can enhance your business. It was, and his wife was sitting next to me, and we started chatting like right in the middle of this thing. I was in the front row. It was so rude. And and she asked me what I did for a living. I said, I flip apartment buildings. And I told her this small town in Idaho where we had an apartment building. She said, oh, where do you have them? I said, well, we've got one in Ohio. We've got some in Arkansas. I've got this in this little town in Idaho. She said, oh, do you like that town in Idaho? And I said, yeah. And she said, do you want another building there? I said, yeah, if we could find another building, I would totally buy one. It's a great town. She goes, no, I mean, like my grandma just died and she lived in that town and we're trying to sell her apartment building. I could not believe it. I was just stunned. And so she and I started talking. I said, no, we have to be quiet. Your husband's speaking. So as soon as he got done and sat down, she reaches over and she's like, hitting him. It's like, honey, she's going to buy grandma's apartment building. And he just like latched onto that. He said, I want to buy that building so bad, but I don't know how. And so he says, I think I can raise the capital for it if we can team up. And so that's how I met that. And he brought in a couple of partners with him. I raised some more capital off LinkedIn. So that's how we got those partners. And then I had somebody reach out to me from a podcast. She lived in that town, in that little town. And she said, I would love to do a deal. So we actually put her in charge of boots on the ground construction management. So you're going to meet people, but I meet a lot of people. I could potentially partner with a lot of people, but I definitely screen them on how compatible we are on skill sets. You're bringing the deal, I'm bringing the money, she's bringing the construction know-how, and she lives there. Like, you're looking for certain people. And if you have a good deal, it's a lot easier to find people than it is to find money, in my experience.
Got you. And Desmond's got a question because I would hog up this whole thing.
Go ahead, Desmond.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great, excellent session. Thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you, Emma. One of the things I'm getting over is, okay, once you pull money out of the deal, sometimes you may not get the same exact return. So now I'm understanding more about compounding interest. So you don't look for the same exact numbers every deal. Some deals may be a little higher, 15, some shorter, or 20%. How do you go about it? Do you look at it that way, as it's money that's just investing its own interest in its earning?
The longer you have your money sitting in a non-compounding account, like a savings account, a CD, some sort of money market, the longer you have that sitting there, the lower your return is going to be while you're looking for a home run. So you find a home run, right? And you put your money in there, but it spent 6, 8, 9 months sitting in a money market while you were looking for a home run. I think you would make better returns if you just found a base hit and got it moved. Like, keep the money moving. The velocity of money will make you a lot more money than the actual deal itself. And I'll add to that, if you can find a deal where they end up with a refinance. I don't like refinances because they're risky, because you don't know the terms, especially right now, and they're basing their returns off that those refinance assumptions, which are basically a shot in the dark right now. So if you can find a deal that's not planning a refinance, that's great from a risk management standpoint. But if they refinance anyway because they got a great deal, you get a huge chunk of your money back, 50, 60, sometimes 100%. Usually it's closer to like 60, 75% of your original capital, but you still have a stake in that deal for another 2, 3 years beyond that. So then you can take your original capital, and it's basically a little part of it still in the original deal. And the second part of it, you go and put in another deal. And those months you were, that year, 2 years you were waiting for that refinance money to come back, you've made more money in your job or flipping a house or whatever it is. And then you can add to that pile and then go invest in another deal. And so you're able to triple duty sometimes on the same pile of cash. That's how you make money in real estate. It's not by sitting around until you find a home run. There are plenty of base hit deals out there, and especially in the market that we're just coming out of, that turned into home runs just because nobody could have predicted what cap rates did. So keep your money moving. Don't put it into a bad deal just to put it into a deal. But there are lots and lots and lots of base hits out there. And if you've got money burning a hole in your pocket, a base hit is just fine.
Thank you. You're the second person I heard about velocity. That was Stephen Arnold. He was in Canada. I used to listen to him, and he was talking about, I'll take this and put it in another one because it's much velocity. So thank you so much.
Yeah, don't ever look at what the house you sold is worth because I shouldn't have sold it. Yes, you should have sold it because what you did with the money afterwards ended up being a better return than if you'd kept the house. So if you're very careful about the way that you look at opportunities and opportunity comparisons, we look at a lot of deals. So I know what's a base hit because we look at so many. So that doing an opportunity comparison will help you feel more comfortable. And basically what we're doing is a dollar cost averaging approach, just keeping your money moving. You're buying when the market's up, you're buying when the market's down. You're going to win some, you'll probably lose a few. I mean, it's tough to admit, but it happens. But if you just keep it moving and you do a lot of dollar cost averaging opportunity comparisons, you will end up ahead in the long run. And the same thing is true with the stock market. You'll see if people try to time the market versus just dollar cost averaging like a blind person, they all end up millions of dollars ahead on the DCA versus trying to time the market. Even if they only bought on the days where the stocks were the highest, they still end up behind where the blind DCA guy ended up ahead.
Thank you.
Next question. Marcus, you got anything for her?
Just listening, man. She was great. I really appreciate it.
If not, I got more. So
Go ahead, Jordan.
y'all go ahead and jump in.
Far away.
All right. So going back to partners, that's my biggest thing. That's what my biggest struggle. So you said that you do a kind of what is that, a disc or a personality assessment to see where strengths and weaknesses are. Now let's say me, as an operator, I'm looking for people who are on the capital raising side or on the financial administrative side, especially based on my conditions, because I'm actively working and flipping. But again, when you're looking and doing those assessments, did you get to build those relationships over time? Or was this, you tried out a deal here and there? How did you evaluate the risk part of, well, this person seems good enough. What size deal can I put them on? Or, how closely can I bring them in? Did you ever struggle with any of that? Or was that ever an issue?
I don't actually know my guys very well before we do a deal together. And most people would tell you it's like absolutely backwards. You should get to know them. You're getting married. I feel like what I would prefer to do is have really set upfront expectations. And so I'm trying to find a link to a a questionnaire that we go over when we're going into a deal, where we sit down together and here it is. Let me grab the link. I'll put it in the chat, where we sit down together and we go through these questions and we say, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to handle that? And so we have this thing that then we can send to our attorney, because then he's going to take this document that we've created with all these questionnaires. Like, what are you going to do if someone dies? What are you going to do if we run out of money and you need to make a loan to the LLC? And it takes a lot of these things out of the equation. And we often will be saying things like, well, what does the operating agreement say? Because when we get this questionnaire done, which is one my attorney gave to me, we'll send it to our attorney. And we've had people tell us like, wow, this is the easiest operating agreement I've ever done, because they have all of these questions already done. They don't have to sit in an interview with us while we argue about how it's going to go. We already got to argue for 2 hours about answering these questions. And once we have it settled and everybody's like, everybody good? Everybody good? And then we'll divide up jobs. We'll assign percentages amount to who's doing what. And we'll assign percentages amount to how much money everybody's bringing in. Now, you can't really do that in a general partnership where you're bringing limited partners. You can't give people rewards of equity based on how much money, but these people actually have real jobs. It's a legitimate joint venture. And so we'll give them, we'll basically divide the money into one bucket and the jobs into another bucket, and the aggregate of how much work you're doing and how much money you're bringing in decide your total equity. And so that's the first spreadsheet that I sent where we work that out. So we ask each other these questions as we're going through the deal process. If somebody tells me I have 200 grand, I want to go into a deal with you, I don't say, oh, good, let's just sign you up. There are still these steps that we have to go through. They have to vet the deal. They have to decide if they like it. And finally, it's not like I have a bunch of people competing to put money in this deal. Sometimes I do, where I get to choose really the one that feels right and who aligns best on this questionnaire. But a lot of times you're just trying to get enough money together to do the deal. And so you better be able to work with these people. The very first commercial deal I ever bought was a partnership who was getting divorced because they couldn't work together. And meeting them all, I realized, wow, no, they're terrible together. Like, no wonder they're getting divorced. They still made money off the project, but there's so much meat left on that bone because they got out of it way too early. And I think that if they had just gotten organized on the front end, they probably would have had a lot more success, but they were changing the rules right in the middle of the deal. And because it wasn't going right. And so then I'm taking over and we're going to do this instead. And lots of arguing, just lots of problems. And so if you can make sure that you have upfront expectations and these expectations are managed in writing, if this is a legal document, an operating agreement, and we'll have a cap table in it, like so-and-so's LLC has 60%, or we try and keep it under 50%, but so-and-so's LLC has this much, so-and-so's LLC has that much. And then we know exactly what the equity splits are when it's time for distributions. If somebody's not doing the work that they said they were going to do, we're like, hey, we awarded you equity based on this job that you said you were going to do and you're not doing it. And so if this is something you can't follow through with, we're going to need to adjust your splits here. And we do that all the time because the spreadsheet worksheet, all we have to do is just lower his and raise somebody else's, and then it all works out to 100%. And we're able to then update our cap table and our operating agreement with the updated equity splits, and everybody agrees on it, because you're never going to be sitting in a meeting where 3 of your partners will be like, dude, you're really dropping the ball here. Like, we need to do an equity split adjustment. Have them be like, no, I'm doing a great job. Like, nobody ever does that. If you do, that's super toxic. Like, how'd that person even make it through the negotiation process? You really learn how to deal with people. And there are some people who are so good at what they do that you just let them do that one thing, and you just pick up the slack for them everywhere else because they're such superheroes at that one thing. It's kind of like the autistic software developer who has a bad attitude and bad social skills and bad hygiene, but he's such a good developer that everybody just picks up his slack and he's a rock star anyway. So if you can find somebody like that, be prepared to carry their weight, because they're worth it, because what they're producing is worth all of the weaknesses that they bring in.
Gotcha. And so you're just out here raw dogging these relationships, just like, hey, let's get it.
Yep. And I think I've got 6 kids and I'm from a big family. And so we can't fire each other. You don't like your sister-in-law, you don't get to fire her. So learning how to communicate, learning how to get along, learning how to smile at the weddings, and not just arm's length, like, hey, it's great to see you at the wedding and leave. Like, actually have a relationship with this diverse group of people is really, really important. And they come from different upbringings and backgrounds, because like, I'm married into my husband's family, he's got siblings, they're all married, and then they all went and had kids. So it's just a huge group of people. You need to learn how to communicate. You need to learn how to ask for what you want. I call it a healthy level of selfishness or a healthy level of narcissism, where you believe that you have a function and a role and you can ask for what you deserve and you can ask for what you're worth. But at the same time, understanding that everybody else is a beautiful human who has strengths and weaknesses, learning how to magnify their strengths. There's a good book called Multipliers that you might want to read. It's about how to find everybody's unique genius, and where you get to sit back and multiply that genius instead of everybody feeding into your, like, oh, I have 1,000 doors and I'm a great syndicator. Like, none of that really matters when you're in the middle of a partnership. It's about finding people's superpower, enabling that. And I do the same thing where I can say, hey, this is a weakness of mine, I need help, and they're more than willing to help me out. So it's a give and a take that way. Very, very honest and very vulnerable. And so you're balancing that vulnerability with that selfishness, and going in, and everybody's expected to do the same thing because I want to honor other people's desires and help them reach their goals. And by so doing, I'm going to reach my goals. You have to be able to communicate. So I would say, like, Crucial Conversations is a great book. I recommend it a lot. And one of his interns is the one who wrote Multipliers. And so those 2 books really did change my business life, my ability to partner with a diverse group of people.
I'm taking the notes down. That was awesome.
Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. And I can never remember the name of the author for Multipliers, but there it is. And I think my favorite part of Multipliers is near the end, where she starts talking about the ways we accidentally diminish other people, because we're well-meaning, we're well-intentioned. But instead, what we do is we say, hey, let me give you some unsolicited advice, or some little criticism, or let me get irritated when you're not doing something that you're not good at. So I'll give you an example. You know, that guy that I was talking about that was an underwriter, and that I met him at a conference, and he's just an, underwriting wonder boy with a spreadsheet. I hired him to do a pro forma at another property that I was on because I wasn't capable of doing it. My partner wasn't doing it. Again, it was just, we were just needing this. And I said, I'm just going to hire this out. Right. And so I was telling my former partner, as I was giving him information he needed to do this paid pro forma for us, how frustrating it was that we didn't have this already and we got to hire it out. And he says, no. He goes, if I was your partners, I would not be wasting my time on something that you could pay a dude $50 an hour to do. He says, I'm your $50 an hour guy. I will make this pro forma, and your partners are going to go off and do the thing that they're amazing at. And I thought, okay. I immediately went back to my partner and told him what he said. And I said, I apologize for all the frustration that we've been having about getting this pro forma put together, because it ended up being a $300 job that we hired this other guy to do. And you went off and you were able to perform in your area of expertise. And he was so right. So right. You don't be the $50 an hour guy. Be the guy who makes $10,000 an hour. If we could hire somebody to do what you do for less than $10,000 an hour, $100 an hour, what purpose are you serving?
Got it.
Any more questions for Emma?
I have a question.
Hey, Courtney.
Hello. First of all, I want to say thank you to the host. I started watching this not too long ago, and it has been great and filled with a lot of great information. I'm grateful. And to you, Miss Powell, this has been amazing. Like, I am very inspired because everything you said has been speaking my language. Like when you were talking about passive income, I was talking to a group I'm in today, and they were saying what are your goals? And I was like, my goal is to retire, get passive income and do what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a whatever. And so
you don't want to take over the world?
I'm very inspired, but I would basically,
Yeah.
And so I just want to know, so if you're starting out, right, and let's say you I guess have limited, let's say you're just starting out from square one, you know what I'm saying? What would you say to someone? What advice to build up to that? And then is it imposter syndrome when you think I'm just starting out, I can't get into commercial? Or is that true? Or what's your advice?
Well, I have two thoughts on that. We'll go back to what I was talking about before, where the email list is king when you're raising money. So get your list together, sit down. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be a piece of paper and a pencil. It doesn't matter. Get your names down. You can expect about 10% of the people on your list to ever invest with you. So if you need 60 investors on a project who are all putting $50,000 a piece in, you do the math and you realize you need a couple thousand people on your list so that you can get, if you have 7,000, maybe 700 of them will ever invest with you over the lifetime of your deals. The email list is king. Build the list. I was in a meetup with Brandon Turner the other day, who is he used to do the Bigger Pockets host. Yeah. And I asked him the same question. I'm struggling to raise money. What one piece of advice could you give me so I can raise more money? He's like, I'm obsessed with building my list right now. That's all I think about. That's all I do, the bigger list. He's raising a lot of money on Instagram by having just a little social media campaign. And if you go into the story brand, Miller, there's a way that you can, where you haven't done this before, but you're going to take us along on your journey with you. And that's your social media. That's your email. That's what you're doing. Here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm doing. I would say you got to get a deal. That's what the Investing Club does. It gets you into a deal. Get into a deal. It gives you an enormous amount of marketing material. We closed on it. Here's a before. Here's an after. Hey, here's a progress. Hey, we just sold it. We just ran it. Whatever. Any content that you can have, if you're ever in the properties area, do live walkthroughs if you can, if it's legal to share it. Just get yourself into a deal, get some content and build the list, because the content is the purpose of building the list. And the only thing you're doing on social media is to then build the list. Everything has to funnel into that list.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And I'll tell you, my 19-year-old daughter, one thing that she really did that helped her out a lot in kind of finding her direction and figuring out what she's going to do is I brought her to a mastermind with me. It was that same entrepreneur mastermind where I found that apartment deal the first time I went. So the second one I went to, I brought her along, and it's not cheap, right? But they have one right now that's like 4 hours away. She could drive there. I think it's like $1,500 to go and spend like 4 days at this mastermind. She walked away from that experience with a completely changed mindset. She said, I've always thought rich people were just greedy and selfish and shallow. And she's like, I just spent a week with them in Mexico at a really nice resort. And she says, and they were just so normal and down to earth. And she says, and nobody was there asking, trying to sell me anything or being slimy or anything. She said, they just would ask me, like, I'm a 19-year-old kid. They're like, well, what are your goals? How can I help you? Free advice. Look me up after. I'll connect you with so-and-so. That's the power of networking. And it completely shifted her mindset on her success outlook, because instead of thinking that she was greedy or shallow for wanting to be financially free, she was seeing all these people who've already done it and was extremely motivated and inspired by them, and to come home and actually put in the work that it was going to take to build the list. And you know who the first people on her list are? All those rich people she met at that mastermind.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it
That is
it wasn't that expensive in the grand scheme of what we're doing. You know,
Mhm.
I think I spent $1,500 for the thing, and then some more for the hotel and some airfare, and it was for the two of us. So I paid for her on that one. But if you're young and you don't have a mommy who's going to pay for you to go do that kind of stuff, just find a place to be where you can meet wealthy people. It really just boils down to that. You got to find
Right.
people who have money. You got to be around them, and they love her because she's young and she's hungry and they're willing to help her. And
Right.
so if you have zero experience, you know, you need to find, you're probably older rich people who are kind of already retired or near there, because they're just going to want to pour out all their information and knowledge onto you the way that they did to her. And that was
Right.
extremely effective. So she's basically building a capital raising business at 19 and using the club deals to kind of catapult herself into some sort of credibility, building a list. She's in very early days, but that's basically what she's doing.
That is awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So read that book, Story Brand. It's how to do your marketing in a way where you are Yoda, the guide, and they are Luke Skywalker, the hero of your story. And Luke Skywalker has problems. So he's got to defeat, you know, Darth Vader, right? And he doesn't know if he can do it. So that's the crux of that story. It's like his insecurity and his imposter syndrome. And I don't know if I have what it takes to be a Jedi, but then the ultimate good versus evil story that it really gets into all of us. And then he's got these Yodas along the way who help him. And so your goal is to be the Yoda. And if the way you position yourself to be that guide is, I'm only 2 steps ahead of you, I'm just going to report back and you're going to come grow along with me and learn along with me. That's like the journey marketing versus the expert marketing. So I started out more in the journey space, and I've been kind of moving over into the expert space as my business grows. But you can definitely start in that journey guide and eventually become the expert guide.
That is excellent advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm just going through that Story Brand book now. It's fantastic. I'm at early days. I keep having to stop and take notes because I'm like, oh, there's so much good stuff in here. And I'm a marketer. Like that's what I did in my previous career was, you know, content management for social media. And I'm still learning a ton of stuff from this book. Highly, highly recommend. And then there's also another one called by Harmon Brothers. I can't remember what it's called. They have a great podcast. Let me look it up real quick. I think I actually have it right here. Hold on a second. Raising Unicorns. So they do comedy marketing. It's brilliant stuff. And they wrote a book and they have a course on how to do the same kind of marketing in your business. So between Story Brand and the Harmon Brothers, I'm learning a ton about marketing and how to make my brand more appealing and more engaging and all of that. Otherwise, it could kind of is a dry and kind of boring subject otherwise. So you have to make it fun. A lot of the Raising Unicorns podcasts I don't find to be very helpful because they're running a marketing agency. So I just kind of pick the episodes that are talking about the specific marketing itself and not so much about running a marketing agency business.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully that helps. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've come across or read or looked at that's just really been, and none of these are real estate related either. Like, do I have a real estate related one? Okay, here's a freebie. Let me see if I can go get this link. It's free underwriting models with free training videos so that you can learn how to evaluate a deal. And when somebody brings you a deal, you have a simple spreadsheet that you can plug the numbers into and decide if it's a deal or not. In the club, we kind of do all this together. So I don't have to underwrite anymore because I don't like it. But you do need to learn how to do it. And I just put out a video on my YouTube channel that walks through the pro forma. Let me get you a link to that. It's 4 1-hour videos, Zoom calls just like this, where I put up like graphics and illustrate how to do it. So that's a YouTube channel if you want to pop over there and watch those. I usually ask people to spend like upfront 5 to maybe 10 hours learning about this stuff. And then they can start to get involved and do a deal, at least at the club level or limited partner level. 5 to 10 hours of really immersing in stuff like that will get you to where you need to be to feel like you can do something with some amount of confidence. I will be doing some capital raising stuff coming up. I have imposter syndrome where that goes because I don't raise money from limited partners. So I don't know. I might be able to do some joint venture videos or something, but right now, a pitch deck, spreadsheet, legal disclosures, and then how to get yourself through the portal and wire the money and take care of all that signatures and all that stuff. So hopefully that'll be helpful. Do we have another hand up with Marcus and Francisca?
Oh yeah, I had my right hand raised. Thank you so much. This is great. I heard about this meetup through Clubhouse, and I haven't been able to join consistently because I'm typically working, but great content every time I pop in. I appreciate you for your time. I'm totally with Emma. I want the option not to work. That's my goal. I want to be able to travel and do philanthropic work and, things like that. So I love the idea of the investment club because even though I've done a deal, it's still like looking for opportunities and ways to just invest passively or just, maybe you don't have 200K, but you can put in a few thousand here and there. So I really, really like that idea. So I signed up for everything like LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah.
I did all of that stuff. So, but yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. My other question was, with the investment group, I know my strategy I want to do like a buy and hold strategy where as I do flips, like I would buy it, fix it, and then refinance and pull out the equity. So with the investment group, I'm assuming these are solely flips, correct?
It's a commercial real estate. And so we basically are, I hate to say this, but it's kind of like a glorified limited partner where we come in with our pool of cash, we negotiate for better terms with that, and then we'll take on some sort of a job that they delegate to us because we only have a sliver of ownership in the deal. And so we're only taking on a sliver of the management. It should be about equal with the amount of equity that you're getting. So the one that we're doing right now, we're taking over their investor relations. We're going to do the monthly newsletters, answering questions, just because I said, like, what are you struggling with the most in your company? And they were like, investor relations. So let's take that over. And everybody has different things to say. Somebody told me yesterday, he's like, oh, you got like attorneys in your club? You got like insurance guys in your club? He goes, there's plenty of stuff we hate doing that we could delegate out to you. So just, taking on some of that as a club, and we all share that labor. That's how we get stuff done. And so we're able to go in and do a little something to contribute, but it's not heavy workload. And so we're flipping apartment buildings, but it's a slow flip because it takes a couple of years to get it full cycle.
Okay, I see. All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I think that if you're having success flipping houses or wholesaling or whatever, and that's your business and you're really putting a lot of time and effort into that, or you're putting time and effort into being a great lawyer, great doctor, great engineer, great marketer, e-commerce guy, it doesn't really matter. If you're putting a lot of time and effort into that and you're making some good money at it, just be a limited partner. At least for a while. When you get your business a little bit more on rails and you can start thinking about learning something else, then maybe it's time to do like a deal with the club, something. But if you've got a good source of income and you're killing it in that, like, don't take on a new business. Just be a limited partner for a couple of years and just learn little by little. You can get that 5 to 10 hours in over the course of a week or over the course of 5 years. It's totally up to you.
Yeah, no, I'm totally starting out. I work full time in healthcare, and so I bought a triplex, and so I want to build my real estate portfolio essentially. So
Okay.
I'm looking for opportunities for passive income and different deals.
I've actually never flipped a house. I've tried a couple of times, but I ended up keeping them as rentals, which is why I was running out of money and had to become a syndicator. So it's at the buy and hold, definitely, but I needed a certain amount of cash invested passively before I could retire on it, and I didn't have enough. And so I do things like buy rentals and do syndications as an active to get that pile of money where I need it to be. And I know exactly what that amount is so that we can have the cash flow we need in order to retire. And so if you're still trying to get to that cash flow pile, that pile of cash, then just keep working, keep hustling, doing what you're doing, and come and do a couple of club deals, because that allows you to do it almost as a limited partner. And you don't have to go buy like an apartment building by yourself. You can keep on buy and hold and, buy, refinance and all that you're good at, or that you're even learning to be good at. You're putting all your focus and energy into that. And you just get involved in a much smaller way in the kind of stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Yep. Yeah. You got the right idea though.
Yeah, just trying to, have the option not to work, not trying to be like our parents.
Yep. And I feel like one of my passions is to teach people how to do this kind of thing so that we can all go out and be like an army of philanthropists together. Like, I don't know what charity you're going to start, but if I can have even a small part of helping you quit your job and go start a charity, then it's like the web that we all participate in to collectively make the world a better place. And, we live in a capitalist society, so you need to have some sort of financial success so that you don't have to work, so that you can really put your mind towards, your passion project. So I love taking part in people's journey like that. All right, Marcus.
Thanks. So I guess I have two questions, but I'll just ask one at first. I'm kind of in a situation where I've been investing in real estate for maybe like 5-7 years. I have a couple of multifamilies. I'm not too old, so I still have a lot of ambition to kind of grow. So, but I also know I've been literally doing it all on my own as far as like acquisition, managing, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little nervous because it's a little bit control freak kind of in me to like bring on other people. But I know in order to grow, it's a lot easier with capital and obviously like, just risk management purposes and things like that. I guess I have some examples or properties that I could be like, hey, this is what I've done. But I guess I just don't really know like where to start. And like I said, kind of get over my a little bit of anxiety of letting go of some of the reins. Because like I said, I kind of do everything with everything.
Okay. So the one I was telling you about where he was a flipper and I loaned him a bunch of money and now he's getting into multifamily syndication. He has told me many, many times, I don't have partners. I don't do partners. I tried to get him to buy this building with me in Idaho. And he said, you know what? You already have a bunch of partners. He said, if it was just you and me, I would do it, but you would be like my first partner ever. And I was like, oh, wow. So, but he's making great progress. He makes way more money than I do. He has bought everything by himself with his own money from flipping houses. And then he'll go churn that into some small apartment buildings, 8 plexes, 11 plexes, things like that. He owns more units in that little town in Idaho than I do, but I own them all in, big chunk of building, and he's got bunches of little buildings. So he's always just said, like, why don't you have more small rentals? I said, I don't want more small rentals. They're a pain in the butt to manage. I'm sick of them. I want to sell them all and I want to redeploy that all into larger deals with other people manage it. So there are 2 answers to that question. The one is he calls me the other day and he said, I'm selling all these 8 plexes and 12 plexes. I got to go buy an apartment building. And he goes, I got to start raising money like everybody else raises money. How do you do this? And that was a massive about face. I've seen him in commercial real estate investing networking groups that I've been in where he sit down. I'll be like, dude, what are you doing here? Aren't you like Mr. Successful House Flipper? He's like, I can't keep doing this. I'm getting so burned out. It's a job, right? And then like he sits down next to him, a guy that just gave like a presentation to our local RIA. He's like, I flip 40 houses at a time. Like, dude, didn't you just give us a presentation about flipping 40 houses at a time? He's like, yeah, but my wife's going to divorce me if I keep doing this. So it is a job. It is a job. And so now he's looking at trading up his 8-plex and 12-plex and all these managing and redeploying that into a larger building. And he realizes he needs partners and he needs more cash. It is a team sport. And so he really has come to the point where he's had to work with enough people, enough money partners as private lenders that he's really good with people. He's really good with people. So it's a natural progression for him. So if you're nervous about it, one thing you can do is put very little of your own money into it. So the only thing that you have at risk is your time. And take a little bit of money and put it in someone else's deal as either a limited partner or do a club deal where you're just putting some cash in and you're doing a tiny bit of the work and you're learning how to watch, how to trust, how to let other people manage the money. And the amount that you have in, you're not losing sleep over. So if you have a little bit with this guy and a little bit with this guy and a little bit with this guy, as a whole, you got a lot of money out, but it's not all in one basket. And then the other example I'll give you is we just closed a deal in July through the club where we borrowed in like $650,000. It's hardly anything. And it took like 15 of us to get that together, right? And it was a $70 million deal for 265 units in a really posh area outside of Orlando. Beautiful property, totally institutional grade. And guess what's on my resume now? I brought in like $100,000, right? I own like 0.002% of that deal. And that 50 grand of mine and the 50 grand of, the limited partner that I brought in is not that much. I'm not losing any sleep over it, right? I help out where I can. We sit on the asset management meetings. They give some little tasks to do, right? But now I have an institutional grade property on my resume as a co-partner. So the way that we're doing it is not just getting people into their first deal, it's getting people of their first deal of any type. So for me, I needed institutional on my resume. Somebody else has never done development before, but he wants to be a developer. And the first question they ask you, so you've ever gone vertical on anything? And you're like, no. Yeah. So he's getting into some ground up deals that the club is doing. So he could say, yes, I've gone vertical on 2 or 3 projects. One project isn't going to change your world. You got to do a couple of these sliver type of projects. That's how you let go. That's how you give someone else control. Don't put so much money into it. Just test it out, try the waters, and then use what the club is doing to scale up to that next level that you need to be at of any kind of resume builder thing that you need on there. You can get through kind of what we're doing. Like I said, now I've got a $70 million institutional on my resume. I never would have done that deal as the lead syndicator. Never.
Okay.
Too much work. But it helps me raise capital because when I put that out there, I closed. It's a beautiful property. It's almost class A. And people are like, dang, what you been working on? And they are so impressed by this. I'm like, I like this much, like sliver of, but now I've got tons of marketing content because of it. So,
so I appreciate it. And then I guess the other question, unless someone has a hand up, is, obviously economic and financial times have changed pretty significantly in the last 6 months. Obviously, we came out of a 2-year period where there was almost unrealistic return. Is there like a adjustment for investors' expectations, and like how are you kind of managing that? And yeah.
I'm seeing cash flow go way down. And one thing I was expecting was when we started seeing this negative leverage where people are buying at cap rates that are below their interest rate, that cash flow actually would go up. And the reason why is because your LTV goes down. So instead of leveraging at 80%, you might be leveraging at 65%. And so even though you had to put more cash into it, which typically will reduce your cash on cash return, your debt payments are so low that you actually end up with higher cash on cash return. That has not happened yet because even though interest rates have gone up, the commercial rates are still better than the residential rates. So they haven't spiked quite as bad as what we've been seeing in the residential markets. And the LTVs are still high. So what we're seeing is the mortgage payments are going up and the cash flow is going down. And as those interest rates go up even more, that LTV will come down and maybe cash flow will start to come back. But for the next little while, like finding a cash flow deal has been kind of tough.
So does that mean looking at different markets because of that? I'm in Seattle, so like obviously pretty expensive.
Seattle had the biggest drop in home prices over
the
last 3
Well,
months.
had the biggest climb too. So one of them at least. So what comes mean reverting, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I actually grew up in Seattle and I do not have any properties in the state of Washington because I like to only invest in really landlord friendly states.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a good landlord and I'm going to do a good job on my own, right? Like I'm the kind of person who does not want to be told what to do. I got this. Like I really want to build like strong communities and safe, clean housing. And I want to help people who basically, when you're raising the level, people can't afford to live there anymore. And so we put together resource packages of like, where else can you go? Like, you know, what kind of housing can you get? What kind of rental assistance can you find? So we just put together resources and give it to everybody. If they can afford to stay there, they can afford to stay there. And if they can't, then we try and help hook them up with resources. And that's really important to me. So I do that on my own. I like to be in super low regulation states. So I haven't done anything in Seattle or Washington at all. But I do a lot of stuff in Idaho.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's a wild west out there.
Yeah.
Not like Arkansas though. Arkansas is like, do they even know what rules are out there? I'm like, it's like the only state in the country where the landlord's not required to provide habitable housing.
Whoa.
Like it's inhumane. Like the stuff that we bought in Arkansas was shocking condition. Like people can't live like this, right? And I'll tell you, like it was shocking. So you want to go in, you want to be a good landlord, no matter where you are, no matter what the rules are, just do a good job.
Yeah,
Be
no, I
conscientious.
talked to the attorney regarding 1031 exchange. She'd recommended certain, those type of markets, but it just makes me nervous because of potential recession and lack of economic diversity in some of those areas that make me a little like, man, they're gonna get pneumonia if we get the cold here.
Yeah, picking a market. If you do know Neil Bawa, have you ever heard of him before? I'm sure he's a data scientist turned multifamily syndicator. I'll type in the name there. He has like 6 points. He has a free course on Udemy. I think it is like udemy.com. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that website. It's just like free classes. And he talks about how to pick a market, and he bases it on several statistics like crime rate, population growth, population size. And it's not just like if it hits this, it's how those things interplay. Like, for example, it's of a small town, that's a negative, right? But if it has a high rate of population growth and high economic diversity, then it's not going to completely kill that deal. You're saying, okay, well, if you have these negatives, then the positive would need to be here. But if it's really negative, the positive needs to be way up here. And he teaches how to go through those 6 points and basically make decisions based on what market that you want to be in. I know a lot of the big hedge funds, they just pick like the top 10 biggest cities in the country: Houston, San Antonio, LA, New York. And LA and New York are out for me just because of the regulatory condition, but San Antonio and Houston are both on that list. And then I don't know whatever else is on there. Just pick one of the top 10 in a regulation friendly state. You're going to be fine.
Okay. We can still have an after party, but Emma, thank you so much for coming. You added so much value to the attendees.
You had the after party before.
No, right? I know, right? That is so true. That is so true. So
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. Just remember, everybody, this whole month is all women guest speakers. So
Nice.
we have another woman next week who are going to share a lot of value to you. So please come in next week. So thank you so much. Take care, guys. God bless you.
Thanks so much.